Hello and welcome to the first of the videos in Kennedy Drives. So what I'm going to be opening up with today is a review of the quite a special car in my honest opinion, is the Honda Civic Type R FN2. Enjoy. Now, with this being the first video in hopefully a line of videos, as you'll see in the next coming weeks, months, years, depending on when you're watching this really. So I thought I'd start with this. So a little bit of background on the Civic Type R. So the first Civic Type R was launched in 1997, I believe, and was known as the EK9, which featured a 1.6 litre B16B and was widely renowned for its high rev line and VTEC system. Then followed the EP3, which has gone on to garner universal acclaim for its handling and its independent rear suspension and its once again high revving K20 engine. And then that was followed up with the FN2. Now, on the face value, the FN2 is a step back in a lot of areas. As most of you famously remember, the review on Top Gear by Jeremy Clarkson, the review of the FN2 was quite scathing. I believe that would be the correct word to use. Clarkson mainly focused on the points of, for instance, that the independent rear suspension was now gone in favour of a torsion beam. Now, the reasoning behind that was the cooking variant of the FN chassis. I think it was believed as the FK or FN1, depending if you want the 3-door. I could be. I'm a little bit hazy on the details, so if I am wrong, please don't be afraid to notify that in the comments. The reason for that was to give it a flat boot and give it the same sort of magic seat layout as was accustomed to in the Jazz. However, that did translate when it came to the Type R that it would have a torsion beam, and that's where a lot of the negative press came from. And a lot bit of the negative press came from the fact that the EP3 had 197 horsepower from its 2-litre K20 engine. The FN2 had a whopping one more horsepower than the EP3, and considering the car was larger, did sort of get a reputation as a car that wasn't very fast. Now, I'll get onto that in a moment. So, to start then, just on paper, the FN2 does not look like a very tempting proposition. However, I am here to tell you that is not the case at all, as this isn't just any FN2, this is my FN2. And I did look at EP3s when I was going to purchase this. However, I decided on the FN2 for a number of reasons, as I shall now get into. So, the first thing I shall comment on why I chose the FN2, and possibly why it doesn't deserve the reputation it deserves, is simply the speed. So everyone goes, oh, it's only 1 horsepower more than EP3. Now, that much is true. However, it's still enough to get this car from 0 to 60 in 6.6 seconds, which for the time is still very commendable and does me just fine. Now, the top speed of this, I believe, was 143 from the factory, and once again, very commendable for the time. Certain rivals around the time do include the Mark II Ford Focus ST with its 2.5 litre 5-pot engine derived from the Volvo C30 and other Volvo models of the kind, which produced 225 horsepower and could bring it to a top speed of 150. You do also have the Mark V Golf GTI, which had 200 horsepower from a 2-litre 4-cylinder, and you do also have the Renault Sport Megane 225. So, on the face things, the Civic Type R does go into battle on the back foot with less horsepower. However, as is now well accustomed with Hondas of Honda VTEC units, it's obviously a naturally aspirated unit, so you do get that instant throttle response as soon as you hit the pedal. You do also, and despite what Top Gear would have you believe, the handling isn't all over the place. Now, there is a touch of understeer that is to be expected, obviously, with it just being a torsion beam suspension. It does have its limits. However, it is not quite as bad as Top Gear make it out to be. So, there are ways to improve that handling, and as I shall go into later on in this video, this car has had a number of handling upgrades, including coilovers for a start. I am aware you can go for yellow speeds. Unfortunately, I was on a bit of budget. However, just that alone is enough to tweak the handling just a little bit more, make it that little bit sharper. It is also running on the hard race drop links, and the suspension is completely poly pushed. It does also have a white line rear anti-roll bar installed to take some of that, to take a little bit more from the rear and keep the cording that little bit flat. And in terms of other upgrades, well, I shall. So, in terms of other upgrades we have, this car has been fettered with by the warranted tuners TDI North, which unfortunately are no longer in business, which means it's had the ECU Tech app, which has brought it from 198 horsepower. It was close to about 200 from the factory. Same with EP3s. Honda downplayed the horsepower a little bit. That's why you hear 200 as a number come up quite often, and it's now around 230. Now that's not just for the map. There have been various accompanying modifications. As you can probably hear, it has got a straight through exhaust with running a take it work 421 manifold. We do also have a engine cold air intake, and it is a true cold air intake. We do also have Integra DC5 Type R cams in there as well. And now we're on this nice road, so I shall put my foot down a little bit, and you can enjoy. In terms of driving the FN2, it really is far better to drive than any of the headline figures would have you believe. Now, okay, a lot of people will say, well, 200 horsepower, despite it being 198 if you want to be specific, 200 horsepower, even if it's down on its rivals, is still a healthy amount for a car, and you would be correct. However, that only paints half the story. So the steering in this car is electric. Honda's have been pushing electric power steering for quite a while. It is rather commonplace in today's market. However, back then, not so much. One of the criticisms about the EP3 was there wasn't really much steering feel. Now, as I previously said, I've driven an EP3 and I was considering one before purchasing this, and the steering in that, I do believe, was a little bit harsh for what people say. They do get some feel, however, it's probably not enough to what people would consider, good feedback. Now, the steering in this is a little bit on the numb side, but it is lovely. It is nicely weighted, and when you put it around town, there isn't really too much feel to it. I'm not going to lie about that. However, when you do get it onto on an open road, the steering tightens up, and it really does communicate with you really rather nicely. The braking on this car is there's no other way to say it, is rather on the soft side. I would recommend, if you were to purchase one of these, to invest in some decent braided lines, and also some decent calipers and discs. and obviously pads. I know yellow speed do a very good combination. However, they are a little bit on the pricey side. However, what you do get what you pay for. Once again, the throttle response is fantastic, and despite what has been said about the ride comfort on these, notably Top Gear, I don't particularly find it too bad. Yes, the FN2 is very, very stiff, as you've probably heard from many accounts. However, the ride, while the ride is firm, and I wouldn't call it particularly particularly offensive. If anyone has driven anything, say, like newer than this, like I find the ride in, I've driven a FK2 Type R, and no, I'm not going to beat around the bush, it is brilliant. However, I do find the ride in that to be a little bit more firm than this, for instance, and the same does apply with your Focus ST of the same era. In terms of practicality, this is where the FN2 actually scores very highly. So the only real letdown of the car, and it's sort of the same problem with the Type S variant of the of this shape Civic, is with it being a 3-door, you do only have 4 seats, so you only have 2 in the back. The middle seat just there is a little bit for it, as you would have in a normal car. However, there is no seat belt, so you aren't really able to use that. So that is unfortunately marked against it. However, with the rest of the car, it's for practicality wise, it's fantastic. Plenty of storage cubbies. So you've got, like, obviously your centre console here. You've got the split cup holder here, a little storage cubby just in there. I'll show you all this when I do go for a walk around. You've got nice large door bins, a nice large glove box which is air conditioned, and you do also have a boot which is, for lack of a better word, ginormous. The flat floor, obviously the downside of that is you do have a torsion beam, which is unfortunate. However, the size of the boot is superb, and with the seats folded flat back there, with Honda's clever Magic Seats formula, which obviously, like previously mentioned, was used in the Jazz, you do really have van-like storage back there. Something comparable to something like a Renault Kangoo. But maybe that's exaggerating a tad. However, you shall see. In terms of reliability, most people say, oh, it's a Honda. There are very few issues to look out for, and they should be bulletproof. Now, while the K20 four-cylinder unit in itself, generally speaking, is a very, very solid engine, I have had a few issues with this car that I shall not disclose. So, for instance, the main thing I've had is the braking system. The calipers, it shares the same calipers as the EP3, and any EP3 Type R owner will tell you the standard calipers have a tendency to seize up. So I have now I rebuilt the calipers once, and then went to go rebuild them again, possibly to do with my own incompetence, let's say that, and the calipers just were too far gone, so I've had to replace, I decided to replace calipers with all 4 corners, and obviously to reasonable expense. Now, a few other issues I've had, for instance, the gearbox, they are a known weak points on Type Rs. Now, the gear shift itself is fantastic. However, the synchros, again on the EP3, are known to be the weak point. The second does get weak on this, and obviously gearbox replacement or fixes don't come cheap. Some of the other issues I've had is the air conditioning is a very, very common thing for these, the aircon clutch, and there's a couple of issues with the aircon system, really, actually. The other one that's known is the relay. That's known to just pop, as well as the the aircon clutch on the motor stops spinning. Now that doesn't sound so bad in premise, but when it gets to summer, and especially today, like yesterday, it was close to 28-degree day, followed by a thunderstorm, so really humid, you do feel it. The other issues I have had with the car tend to stem from not so much a mechanical point of view, it's more the bodywork. Now, FN2 owners and any Mark 8 FK FN, you get the idea. This era Civic will tell you that the front wheel arch trims are known to just fall off just for fun. The clips on them just perish, and they can come off without warning. And replacements are incredibly hard to source, and as you'll find if you go through, you know, your usual breaker sites, is that the breakers do know this and then charge you an arm and a leg just for what? For example, I was once quoted £130 for a wheel arch trim for one side. Now, that's the sort of price you'd expect to pay brand new from a dealership. The fact that these are fairly rare to come by in serviceable condition, and the fact that people know that it's a common problem, does sort of inflate the price. So I've been looking at doing £260 for both the fronts, which I must add, both the fronts do have issues, and I shall now show you as we go to the walk around. As we come to the outside of the FN2, you can see it is a very divisive car with how it looks. Now, this was a huge departure for the design for Hondas, because if you see, the EP3 was more a traditional hatchback. They designed the FN/Mark 8 FK, this era Civic, to be more futuristic and to bring in a younger audience. Now, if that worked, the jury is out on that. However, you can come around the front, you can see that the early standard Civics had it was meant to look like a light bar going across there. The Type R obviously has a normal grille, and the later Type S's do, I believe. You do have the triangular fog lights around the front, and what is a common issue on these Milano red ones, as you can see, and this one is no exception, is the lacquer does start to peel. And like I previously mentioned, you do have issues with the wheel arch trims. These do fly off at speed. This flew off on the way back from Cars and Coffee in Chester, and nearly hit the poor Land Rover behind me. So if that chap is watching, I am sorry. As we come down the side, you can see I have had this wrapped by the chap at Wrap That in Kaiowis, up on the North Wales coast. Very nice chap, 100% recommend. As you can see, the 3-door going down the side, and personally I really do think these look fantastic. It's a divisive design, some people love it, some people hate it, and you can see I have put this car on 17-inch Type R wheels, wrapped in all 4 corners on Bridgestone Potenza Sports. As we come around to the rear, so you can see this car has got the Mugen wing as well as the Mugen diffuser, and you do have the light bar effect still going around the rear there. I have fitted a reversing camera, as you can see, as one of the other things that is a criticism of this, and I wholeheartedly agree, is the rear visibility of this car is rubbish, absolutely rubbish. As we go into the boot, if you ignore all my clonk back there, you can see the boot back here is of a decent size. I forgot to put the parcel shelf up, so do excuse me for that. However, you can see it is really a fantastic boot back there. And coming back, once again, it is a divisive looking car. Some people love it, some people hate it. And once again, you can see with the wheel arch, in fact I can show you exactly what goes on here. Is these clips just give way, so I shall have to have a quick look at that. We come to the important question, and that is, should you buy one? Now, the answer in my eyes is there's plenty to like about the Civic Type R FN2, despite what a lot of motoring outlets would have to believe. But there is also, on the flip side, a lot that can irritate the enthusiastic motorist. For instance, the rear torsion beam. Not a lot of people were a fan of that, and the fact that a lot of people won't be able to get on with the ride. I personally find it fine. I know a lot of people will not. It is worth mentioning that this was on 18-inch, the standard 18-inch alloy wheels that come with the Type R. Now, it is now sitting on 17-inch Accord Type R wheels. Now, that has helped the ride somewhat. It is a little bit more smooth. However, you do still get a bit of that firmness and a little bit of that, that little bit of firmness. Now, the ride before, again, it wasn't necessarily a problem for me. However, I understand it might be for some people. These seats also are excellent. I forgot about them. Now, going back to the question, should someone consider this? And the answer to me is yes. It's simply for the fact that the prices for these, I reckon, are at an all-time low. You can pick one of these up for as little as £2,500, and if you want a fairly clean one, low mileage, you are looking around the £4,000 region. And for that money, fantastic. Now, like I mentioned, there are a few things to look out for. The synchros on the gearbox, like I mentioned, are well known for becoming a little bit difficult to say the least. The wheel arch trims, like I mentioned, do like to try and fall off for fun, so it's worth just checking they're secured and in position, and there's no sort of playing in them. The air conditioning as well, make sure that is blowing ice cold, and that when you turn it on, you can see the aircon clutch spinning. The other thing as well is the roof up here, where the ceiling, where the seal for the windscreen meets the roof, likes to collect water in there and just start to rust out slightly. So it's worth just checking that, making sure there's no rust. And the other thing that is worth mentioning as well is if you are looking at a red one, like this example, Milano red, they are renowned for lack appeal. That doesn't just apply to FN2s, that applies to any Honda that's painted in Milano red. They must use some really thick clear coats on that paint. So obviously check around the areas, make sure that the paint is in good condition. Other than that, I find it very hard not to recommend these. It's a lot of car, but not a lot of money. So if you are in the market for one, I'd say ignore what they say on Top Gear and go for it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.